Good evening, afternoon, night, morning, whatever you find a way to watch, listen. This is definitely night right now as I record with a good friend of the podcast and a good friend of mine, Bobby Wilson of the TNT College Football Podcast. Here to not talk about UConn or even college football, but I'm here just to pick his brain on his expertise and definite relationship with the Missouri Valley Conference, just living in the region and being a huge college basketball guy. In fact, a former Division II college basketball player. So this of course is Bobby's first love. This, you might say, might be something that is even more near and dear to his heart. But Bobby, once again, thanks for joining. I know it's late, but I just thank you for being flexible as always.
Hey, Omar. As you know, every time I just say I appreciate you having me on. Love talking sports with you. Love the friendship that we've built. Just excited to talk some basketball with you. Like you said, I mean, this was my first love. Something that, like you said, near and dear to my heart from playing and coaching and stuff. So excited to talk about this. I really am.
Yeah, so I think something for me is like I'm kind of I do know a good amount about the Olympic sports situation for a lot of leagues, but definitely like not as, I guess, not as much in touch with the pulse of fan bases for schools like Bradley, which you live near and which you frequent in terms of attending games. So I'm glad that you're able to discuss on this podcast. Like for me, I always bring up just this obscure kind of like quirk whenever I talk about college basketball. It's like I'm out of place here, like Frank Gifford, who I think there's a clip on YouTube of him being the color commentator an old NIT final. I think it was like Walt Frazier's NIT final at Southern Illinois, and Frank Gifford, for whatever reason, is doing color commentary. That's
I'm gonna
right, the
have to find
same.
that.
Yeah, I think it's on YouTube somewhere. I think someone put it up on there somewhere. But I've heard people at least write articles about it when they found the tape at the Southern Illinois Library. It's a really good story. Illinois Carbondale, I should say. Um, going on with our discussions, we're here to talk specifically kind of like the demise of the WAC and what that could mean for the Missouri Valley and OVC conference, Missouri Valley and Ohio Valley conferences. And so I wrote an article last week, just was crunching the numbers, and of course it's realignment season. Who doesn't love speculation? Anyone can speculate. I'm not saying stuff is going to happen, but I was just there to make a case. And the University of Texas Arlington is kind of an awkward team in this because they don't have football, and there are 3 Texas schools in the WAC that remain, and the Southland Conference has 12 schools as is. So adding UTA, Tarleton, and Abilene Christian would make for an awkward 15, which it's not a make or break, but it does make things awkward in terms of scheduling, as a lot of conferences are at even numbers right now. And so looking at other conferences that are kind of in the region, kind of around UT-Arlington, the Missouri Valley Conference is at 11 on Olympic members, and that's not to be confused with the Football League, which is a separate entity. And the Ohio Valley Conference is also at 11. So UT-Arlington is a fascinating prospect for both of those leagues, which I wrote about. And so I sent you my article to get your thoughts on it, and right away you said you did not want Bradley to travel that far to play games. So I want to know your thoughts about the current geographic footprint of the MVC, and whether that kind of makes it I guess gives it a strength, or it's one of its strengths as a league, or its tight footprint in this era of college sports being spread out, it makes it a weakness.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I'll first speak from like the fans that I've talked to perspective of this. And I think the thing that sets the Missouri Valley, the MVC, apart is like the footprint that they have, and the fans really love that and enjoy that. That you can get to a game pretty easily. That I even know just some of the things that some of the people I've talked to, even with the additions of Belmont and Murray State, like nobody's upset about that because they're good programs that have added a lot to the league, but their footprint is historically a little bit outside of where the Missouri Valley has frequented. I mean, obviously, you can go back in history, and there's been some amazing programs in the Missouri Valley, from Cincinnati to even Louisville, I believe. Like you can go down the line. It's a pretty historic conference when you look at it. But I'm speaking more from the 80s, 90s, 2000s look at the Valley. Obviously, you lose Creighton, Loyola, Chicago, and there's other teams in there that have moved on and done really well. So that's why I made the comment to you about UT-Arlington. I know it's something, at least here in the Peoria and Bloomington, where Illinois State is area, um, with some of the, I've seen some of the news reporters write articles about this exact topic of UT-Arlington potentially being that next member. And I know that there hasn't been like bad things said about it, but I think it's just one of those things where people don't necessarily want that long trip. They want to keep it as close as they can to the footprint that it's been at.
And that makes a lot of sense too, as something that I call the Yukon effect, where you take schools that are way outside of a school's footprint or take them out of their
Mhm.
traditional regional home, and the program starts to struggle as a result. So I can see that happening for a lot of for I guess maybe UTA, not so much the MVC, since they'd be the one that would be outside of their footprint. But there is a lot of value for these programs from a revenue perspective of having games locally where opposing fan bases can travel, and the development of rivalries too. So I do understand that perspective. Which, with you mentioning Murray State and Belmont, I was going to ask this later on, but do you think that the NBC's recent additions of Belmont, Murray State, additionally Valpo and UIC, do you think they've kind of missed the mark with those? Because I don't know if Belmont or Murray State has made a tournament in the few years that they've been in the NBC.
They haven't yet, but they've been in the running, especially Belmont. Belmont's been very very competitive. And Murray State, if you look at the transfer, they hired a new coach this year. Steve Prohm stepped away, and they've hired a new coach, and they've brought in some really really solid additions in the portal. So I could really see them being a factor next season, along with Bradley and ISU return a good amount, and they're adding good pieces. I think Bradley and ISU, if you look at things, will potentially be the favorites. Northern Iowa and then Belmont, Murray State are going to be right there. Belmont, or I'm sorry, UIC and Valpo, I completely understand why they were added because of the Chicago effect. Losing Loyola Chicago, they were natural replacements for them, especially someone like UIC. Valpo at the beginning was a, I don't want to say a stretch. They just had to upgrade some things and get to that level. And Roger Powell's a fantastic coach, and they've lost some really talented players in the portal this year. I feel bad for him, but he's done a really good job there, and I know that he's added some good pieces as well. And I think that they're on the way up. The one I think losing Missouri State is going to be really interesting because of the fact that I mean you got Arch Madness and it's in St. Louis, and now there's kind of a void of the Missouri area. So then it's like, okay, do you add somebody of the like of say a Kansas City, UMKC, or there's I just I'm intrigued to see what they could potentially do in that regard. Does Southern Illinois Edwardsville is that a realistic addition? I don't know. I don't know if SIU Carbondale would want that. Uh, Lindenwood probably just isn't ready for that type of jump yet. But that's one that I kind of look at. Maybe even Southeast Missouri State. Just I always look at Missouri being that the real geographic footprint there, and there's a bit of a void there
Yeah, that is true with the Missouri State leaving. I mean, you don't have an institution in the state of Missouri in the Missouri Valley Conference, but I know it's the case for the Ohio Valley Conference. There's no team in the
now.
state of Ohio in the Ohio Valley
Hmm.
Conference. It's very weird. But with a school like Missouri, with a school like Missouri State, excuse me, with such a large enrollment of 26,000, which
Hmm.
as I'm looking at it right now is the second largest in the league, and one of only three teams in the MVC with an enrollment of over 20,000. You look at a school like UTA with over 40,000 current students, over 270,000 living alumni across the country. And then you look at the sort of things that the NBC is doing from a media perspective. Like I just found that they had 22 games aired across
Hmm.
local stations across the region. Do you think with that kind of movement, I guess from a media perspective, that there is value in adding another market itself and another huge alumni base, huge student base like UTA? Do you think, I guess, a student body slash alumni combination of that size would overcome those doubts in terms of distance?
I think they absolutely can do that. I think that there's a lot to be said on that front. You look at the Missouri Valley, especially this year and in years past as well. I mean, this is a league that is arguably a multi-bid league. You look at 2 years ago, Drake makes it. Indiana State, let's all do. I mean, they should have made it when Robbie Avila was there and the rest of that group. They played in the NIT championship game. That was a fantastic basketball team. Then you look at this year with Drake making it. Bradley had a very, very good year. They were in the consideration. I don't know how realistic the consideration was, but they were a team that you could at least talk about potentially making the tournament. So, I mean, year in, year out, this is a league that can get multiple bids. And they've done very well getting games on ESPNU, ESPN2 on Sundays, Sunday afternoons. They get games on CBS Sports Network. So if you add a team like Arlington, obviously with the blueprint that they have, where their base is in that Dallas area, with the market that they have and the alumni base that they have, I think from the perspective that we're discussing it right now, I think it makes a ton of sense actually.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree. I think it makes a ton of sense. But like you said, that whole tradition, and I think that's kind of a philosophical fight with a lot of conferences, like the MVC, and excuse me, as I'm going to talk about later on this week, the Southern Conference, where a lot of conferences are set in their ways, but when the opportunities present themselves, they may not be as willing. But UTA, though, for everything that they have from an alumni and a student body standpoint, the success isn't really there. So we could have a Valpo or UIC situation with them. But just wanted to ask that about their alumni size or their student body and alumni size. I also wanted to ask as well. I know we talked about Northern Kentucky before in terms of expansion, but Matt Brown, the great writer for Extra Points, has also cited Central Arkansas and Little Rock being in MVC talks. Because do you have any thoughts about those schools kind of being in the mix, or with I guess with Northern Kentucky being closer along with Central Arkansas and Little Rock? Do you see that as a more realistic type of move that could block UT-Arlington out?
I could definitely see Northern Kentucky being that next team from a proximity standpoint. Like they've been to the tournament a couple years now. Um, they're a program that I know well from my D2 days, competing against them. That's a very, very talented program. The facilities match as well. Like they have a very, very solid gym for basketball, men's and women's. Compete at a high level. Um, Central Arkansas, I think, would be a bit of a stretch if you ask me personally. Little Rock, I could see. I know that they've had some success recently. I know a team that I heard thrown around recently that was very intriguing to me. I don't know how realistic it is at all. Could have been just some people speaking about it. But Chattanooga, especially with the run that they just made, I was at the game against Bradley. That was a fantastic basketball game. I had a ton of fun with my family at that game. But great, great game. Um, I think that they could add a lot to the conference potentially. I don't know what they would do from a football perspective if they would want to make that jump to the Missouri Valley Football Conference or what they would want to do. Again, I'm just throwing it out there just because it's something I've heard. I don't know how realistic it is, um, but you hear different different names thrown out there. Like I said, I've heard UMKC. I've heard that thrown out there. I've heard just different things, like even up to the Dakotas potentially. I've heard those thrown around. It, but they're without a doubt. You have 11 teams. They're going to add somebody. It's just a matter of time. I know when Northern Illinois was going through their decision, I know especially in this area there was a lot of talk going around about that. I don't necessarily think that Bradley and Illinois State necessarily wanted Northern Illinois in the Valley. I think that they hold themselves at a higher standard than that from the basketball and the other sports perspectives. Um, just that's just me looking from the outside in, and just some conversations I've had with some people. I think Northern Illinois made the right decision to go to the Horizon League. I think that's a good spot for them. Um, but it would have made great sense from the perspective of adding that 12th team with Missouri State leaving.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good point with Northern Illinois not being quite at that level, basketball wise, and I think the Missouri Valley Conference is like kind of wary to add a school that would add value from the basketball perspective, like we talked about before with Valpo and UIC struggling recently. Going on to the OVC, do you think that the gap is narrowing between the OVC and the MVC?
The top, no. I think the top of the Missouri Valley is very, very talented. I think the top of the Missouri Valley, especially the past couple of years, can compete at a national level. I think we've seen that with Drake and Indiana State, and even Bradley has been able to go compete against some high level teams. Um, so I think when you look at the top half of the valley, I think it would be a stretch to say that the OVC is with them. Um, but I will say the OVC is definitely. I'll speak from a perspective as a fan here. I enjoy watching the OVC men's basketball tournament because it is always so competitive. And you look at it as like any of the 8 teams that make it to Evansville for that tournament realistically can win the tournament. And we've seen it. We've seen teams that were the 7 seed advance to the championship. I really, really enjoy watching that league, especially in March, just because of the competitiveness and everybody's kind of on the same level, which I think is a lot of fun from a fan perspective. I think this is a place where UT-Arlington could really find a spot and create a good footprint because you have the likes of Little Rock not being terribly far. I know that might be a little bit of a stretch me saying that, but it's certainly closer than any of the Missouri Valley teams would be. So I think that they would definitely add something to the conference that would be something that the OVC would definitely enjoy. I mean, I have Eastern Illinois and Western Illinois that are each probably 2 hours so away from me from the OVC perspective. Then you look at Lindenwood, SEMO. I mean, so it's not terrible, and at SIU Edwardsville as well. It's not none of those are very far. But like I said, is it going to be? I think you look at the travel perspective for UT Arlington when it comes to the OVC. I think it might work out a little bit better from a travel perspective, just because you have a couple more teams that are a little bit closer to them.
Yeah, I agree with that. I know I wrote that Little Rock was a travel partner for UT Arlington, but as you get further to the east, and particularly to the Tennessee and the Kentucky schools, the distances are pretty wild. I think around like 800, 900 miles. I will say this, though, about the OVC. While I do agree with at the top of the MVC is pretty much weird, I guess, way ahead of the OVC. I will say that the OVC, if they were to add UT Arlington and take away that big market from the MVC, it would be sort of a preemptive action for them to do that, to take away the
Mm-hmm.
biggest market available and reduce the MVC, which has previously looked at going outside of the boundaries to maybe Northern Kentucky being the biggest brand, biggest market outside of their footprint to kind of expand. So it would be, I think, a smart move for the OVC to reduce the options that are on the table for the MVC. From a media perspective, as the OVC's deal, like, I mean, it's just kind of a shame. Like, the NBC is on local TV. They have that local TV deal. They're on ESPN Plus, they're on CBS Sports Network, as you mentioned. The OVC only has around like 7 or 8 games that are on national linear platforms a year from the men's side, and I think maybe 1 or 2 on the women's side, which is, I mean, it's a shame, really. It's just not great.
It
But
is.
that's kind of how most of the mid major leagues are um, around the country. I mean, you're not really going to reach the A10 and MVC status. So I do think that the OVC should act quickly and add UTA for that reason. But I also think that the travel demands are pretty steep. And
Mm-hmm.
they may have to ask UTA to subsidize their travel, which I can't find exact articles, but I think I've seen either Hawaii subsidize their travel in the Big West or to their Mountain West or conference Mountain West football partners. Or I think New Mexico State offered to do the same. New Mexico State and Idaho offered to do the same when they were both Sun Belt football only members in the late 2010s.
That it's the world that we live in too with college athletics. I mean, I've seen multiple schools recently closing. I mean, we see it every year, but I feel like this year especially, I've seen at least two or three already. I know a school that I used to coach at is always rumble. There's always rumblings about them closing. So it's a hard world out there for some of these quote unquote smaller institutions. So I hope for Arlington's sake that they're able to find the right fit for them, and they'll be able to. I mean, they're in a great market; they can make it work. They've had success in the past. Just looking at their program through the years, I feel like at the Sun Belt they competed at a decent level, and from a basketball perspective, um, I'm not going to say that I know much about the Olympic sports like you do, Omar. I know you are significantly more tapped into that than I am. But I think either way they add value to either the MVC or OVC. It's just which one that they feel fits them best.
Yeah, and geez, for what it's worth, I am not very in touch with the Olympic sports. Honestly, I mean, it's just the revenue sports. I mean, men's, women's basketball, and football. I just kind of calculate distances, and I mean, I just try to find whatever crumbs I can in terms of media information because it is hard to find. But something interesting that you brought up beforehand, which I mean, I'm interested too, I guess, with a certain candidate that you have for expansion for the OVC to get to that 12 team. So I'm just going to let you have the floor with that and then ask my questions to sort of enhance the discussion.
All right, so I'll first say I'm extremely biased in this because it is the institution that I went to and I was a part of the men's basketball program. So again, I'm going to be very biased in this discussion. However, I will say Grand Valley State has for a while now discussed about being moving up and being a Division One member. It is just the discussion has always turned into where where would they go? Um, the football program at GVSU speaks for itself with what they've done through the years. Google what Brian Kelly did there. You can't top what he did there. Ferris State has done an amazing job over the past couple years, as much as I hate to say it, with them being our arch rival. But what Grand Valley's done from a football perspective is something that is unbelievable. And I think that is one of the big holdups when it comes to where Grand Valley would transition to from a Division One perspective, is because where does the football program go? Um, Speaking from a basketball perspective, because that's the program I was a part of as a student athlete, would be when I was there, we were extremely talented. We beat Michigan State. We went to the Elite Eight. We made deep runs in the tournament. We were very, very good. And I know over the past couple of years, that has not been the case necessarily. There's a new coach. They're rebuilt. They're trying to rebuild and get things back to where they've been in the past. And I firmly believe they'll be able to do that. So I think if they went to the OVC, the question I would have is is it worth it for football? Honestly, would be the question I would have from that perspective. Because if you're going to do it, you're going to do it for all sports. So I think the football fit is the most intriguing thing. I've thrown this around in my head at times. Would they potentially look at a Missouri Valley Football Conference affiliation? I again, I have no clue with that. That's just me spitballing things, throwing things around in my head. But I firmly believe if Grand Valley made the jump to the OVC, you look at Lindenwood and Southern Indiana making the jump from Division Two to Division One in the OVC. I can personally speak to the fact that we beat Southern Indiana numerous times when I was there, and convincingly as well. So I think this is a real opportunity for Grand Valley to do something. Again, I think people have seen rumors and rumblings of them making the move over the past few years, but nothing has transpired yet. So I think it's one of those where we just have to wait and see what happens. But I think they're a natural addition to a league such as the OVC. But then the discussion can go into, do you want to make a trip to Little Rock, Arkansas every year from Allendale, Michigan, Grand Rapids, Michigan, let's just say. That's a haul, obviously. I don't know the exact mileage or numbers on that, but it's not down the street, let's just say. Um, compared to now, we would go up into the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and those were good 7, 8 hour trips in themselves, just because they were so far up there. But again, like I said, I'm extremely biased here because it's my school, but at the same time, like I think it's a realistic opportunity, and I think a realistic addition for the OVC.
Yeah, I think it is too. And I know that a couple years ago there were recruits telling that had said that people were telling them, coaches were telling them that they were joining the OVC all the way back in early 2023, but nothing's happened. So I'm sure that those coaches weren't maliciously lying or anything. I'm sure something was in the works, but they just pumped the brakes quietly because I think a lot of people don't want to take the Sacramento State approach where it's you're loud, we're moving up to we're gonna make the move, we're moving up until no one offers, and then you're forced to go independent because you need to put the
Right.
money where your mouth is. So I understand why they wanted to keep it under wraps, and why I also understand why those young recruits at the end of the day, just teenagers, went and told people that, hey, like, this is what we're being told, and
Mm-hmm.
trying to get the best information available to make a decision that would impact their lives for not just the next few years. So I understand that. But from a football perspective, something that has been on my mind this week, and I'm organizing my thoughts and like how to frame the WAC situation, because a lot of people talk about or even joke about the Pac-12's treasure chest of exit fees, NCAA tournament units, bowl games, the millions of dollars that they're supposed to rebuild the conference with. Well, I've come to think about it, the WAC has kind of the same thing. Of course, it's not as big and robust as the Pac-12's treasure chest, but it's still a media deal. They have $8 million in exit fees to distribute among the remaining members, as well as NCAA tournament units from all the way back to the year 2025, all the way back to 2021, the pandemic year. So they have money to distribute. So a scenario that I've had in my head, which is why I kind of asked you about Grand Valley State earlier in the week, is what if the WAC with that money were to pay all the movement fees, pay everything needed to sort of get Grand Valley up to the Division 1 level in terms of upgrades or whatever's needed to get them to Division 1 and make that transition. What are your thoughts on Grand Valley joining a WAC with the remaining 5 members, plus possibly Sacramento State, who reports have said have a handshake deal with the WAC if their proposal to go FBS gets approved? What are your thoughts on sort of the WAC footing the bill for a Grand Valley move if the OVC doesn't come calling?
I think I I would I don't want to speak for everybody here, but I think I'll say GVSU alums have a lot of pride. They take a lot of pride in the institution and the things that we've been able to do from an athletic perspective. And I think that they would look at a move such as that. Um, I don't want to say as below them. I don't know if that's speaking too directly or harshly in that sense. But I don't even think it's something that they would even like think of. Honestly, football will always be king at Grand Valley, and I firmly believe that everyone involved in that program would look at that and be like, "We're already." And again, this is just me speaking, not anyone else. I think that they would look at that as I don't want to say downgrade, but I think that they would look at that as, hey, we're better than these teams already. We just compete at the Division II level at the highest level of the Division II level. But I think that they would look at it that as we can definitely compete and beat these programs. I think that they would look at it as, okay, if we're going to make this move, I think the MAC is a stretch just because there's all the Michigan teams already there. I don't know if the directional Michigan schools would ever want Grand Valley football in the MAC, just hypothetically speaking. So then you look at, okay, if you can't make the FBS jump, is the FCS jump even something worthwhile? Um, if if the likes of North Dakota State and some of the really good schools in the Missouri Valley Football Conference and let's say the Big Sky end up moving on, what then what would then be the incentive to make the jump in that case? So that's why I think that they've kind of pumped the brakes a lot on some of these talks is because football being number one, basketball you could move into the OVC. There's other options that you could make work, even the Horizon League type of thing you could make work. Football is the real tie up in this. In football, like I said, football will always be number one there. Even with our women's basketball program winning a national title this year, baseball, softball are always competing for national titles. Women's soccer has won so many national titles. Um, Track and field, they're as good as it gets. They're from the perspective of Division II track and field. You can't even count the championships that they've won. So you look at it from that perspective, and they can clearly make the jump. It's just football is going to be the thing where it's like, okay, where does football end up is the real question. And I don't think going back to your original question about the WAC, I just don't think that that's something they would even realistically consider.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense from the way you lay it out. I think the United Athletic Conference, which is where the WAC schools play FCS football. It's a very solid conference, but I mean the Missouri Valley Conference, Missouri Valley Football Conference is definitely the target, and if not that, I mean, like you said, the OVC has kind of lost some luster as a football league, and it's also always been in the shadow of the MVFC. I can't remember the last time it's been a two bid league. To be honest with you, I think it's been a very long time since it's been actually. Shoot, I'm misspeaking. Tennessee State got an at-large bid this year, so I should know that. I'm a voter, but yeah. But other than this past year, there aren't many years where the OVC is really viewed in a positive in such a as positive a light as even the CAA, which has been in decline, but is consensus is I guess the consensus second or third best league. So it's not really in that top three. So I understand that perspective. I just want to throw a scenario out there because as I'm thinking about it, like there is a scenario in my head where the WAC does survive this with just the amount of money that they have. They just have to manage it and entice, I guess, members to come
Right.
in.
I wonder if like the likes of say like Cal State Dominguez Hill just played for the men's and women's national championships in basketball. I wonder if that's a program that they could entice. Now there's not. I don't know if they have football or not. I'm not gonna. I have no clue about that. But I wonder if that's like a program that the WAC could entice. I know that there's some talented basketball programs out on the West Coast at the Division II level. Um, I, I I remember Azusa Pacific being very good for a time, and some others as well. I just don't know if some of those. I know Azusa Pacific had football. I don't know if they still do. Because I remember Grand Valley playing them when I was there. Um, but I know that there's some very talented programs on the West Coast that they could potentially, if they could find a way to get them, they'd be able to have success.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, and again, like they have that money. The point is honestly to just survive. And one last thing I'll say about this whole wax discussion is I honestly feel like in my head, something I'm thinking about is like, I wonder if less is more in this day and age where everything is about money, where it's like the amount of money that you make, because the WAC already has a media deal. If they can find a way to
Mhm.
survive this, even keep UTA from leaving to say the M from keep them from leaving for the MVC or the OVC, where you have 7 or 8 teams sharing the media deal, where they're getting more money than they would in a bigger league with a similarly competitive deal. I kind of wonder if that's kind of like the sweet spot or draw of staying in the WAC, where you get all this money to yourself. You get $2 million a year just for participating in a men's tournament game, and the women's game just got units too. So you get all that money
Mhm.
distributed through the league, this millions of dollars just to share to 8 members. Uh, and not to mention that with say 8 members, you have 14 conference games. You build your own non-conference schedule, and you build a geographically logical schedule, or even build your schedule with a bunch of paycheck games. I kind of wonder if that's a sustainable model going forward for the WAC. But it's just a shame that the once proud conference, this conference is over 60 years old.
Right.
And they're seems like they're on death's doorstep right now. So it's just sad. I think that's just the last thing that I'll say about that.
I think we can both agree as fans of college athletics that we just hate to see conferences go by the wayside. Especially one like if we can remember from our childhood, like the WAC from a football perspective, especially was just top. I mean, they were when TCU was in it, like it was like I mean they were the real deal. Like LaDainian Tomlinson, and you can go down the line with some of the other guys that played in that conference. It's just unfortunate to see. I wonder if they can like make something out of this and kind of go like what they've done in the past recently with basketball heavy. If you can just find a couple teams to add um, from the regions that they're in, um, maybe Lubbock Christian or from the Division II ranks, or just trying to think of some teams in that area that I know that have had success. I don't know if you'd be able to add some of those Colorado schools, maybe from like the Rocky Mountain Conference. I know that they've had some amazing success, like Pueblo and the like. I don't know if you're able to maybe pull teams from that realm, if that's a possibility, or what it looks like. It'd be really really interesting to see. But I think like what you were saying with less might be more. Like if you can just have an 8 team league, I think then you run into scheduling issues though from a basketball perspective. But but I think you can make it work.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, they did make it work for a long time. It's a very stressful and tenuous situation to have only 8 teams and
Mhm.
have 1 or 2 teams taken away before that automatic qualifying status gets taken away, and you lose those millions of dollars.
Mhm.
And any day now, like the biggest, I'd say if there is the biggest domino or the most important domino to fall in this would be Tarleton, because Tarleton is just using the WAC as just a placeholder until they ultimately reach the FBS, which I do believe they will at some point. Which honestly, if they're willing enough to, and they have another destination, which the independent route with Sacramento State, I could see them filling that easily because they're in Texas. They have a big enough stadium to attract group of 5 opponents. So Tarleton would honestly be the biggest question mark slash the domino that would trigger the next sort of existential crisis for the WAC. So even then, I don't know if the 8 team um, scenario, if the 8 team alignment is really sustainable in the long run as well. I think it's just like it's been for the past 13 years, just a fight to survive, and even Sacramento State too, for that matter. If they do end up
Right.
joining the WAC with this whole thing, it's like they're going to be out of there the moment the Mountain West the the Pac-12 comes calling. So
Hmm. Exactly. I wonder if, and I don't think the Big Sky would ever have a demise to the level that they would like partner together in that situation. It would take a lot for that to transpire, but I don't know if there's a way to potentially partner that together. Uh, just throwing that out there. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think I think with the Big Sky with Sacramento State and if Southern Utah with those two programs being in the Big Sky, I don't think the Big Sky wants anything to do with any partnership with those two schools. I think
Right,
as it is,
right.
like they yeah, from what I've heard too, like apparently Southern Utah burned some bridges, and yeah, they yeah, that's all I'll say about that.
I can believe that.
I mean, it's not like and it's not like the Big Sky is needy where they can pull a
Right,
180
right.
like the Northeast
Yeah.
Conference did with Robert Morris. How that they were struggling with members and they invited Robert Morris to play football again. So I don't think that's
Chicago
happening.
State, come on down.
Yeah, Chicago State. I mean, not that there's any bad blood there, but you know, I guess you can see how dire a situation is if you're inviting
Right.
Chicago State, which you know, no disrespect to that program, but they probably have the biggest uphill battle of any program in all of Division One to
Yes,
like
they do.
as a state school with low enrollment, low endowment. I mean, but credit to them for staying alive. Like wow, like I'm just glad that they're still around. But I think on that sort of negative note, that's really all that I had on the agenda. Bobby, is there anything that you want to add before we sign off?
Well, just as always, Omar, thank you for having me on. Always, always welcome, available to make it to have these discussions with you, especially because I'm not podcasting myself anymore. Um, but it's always a blast to talk with you. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, likewise. I mean, I was hoping I do remember that you were you know stepping away from podcasting, so I was hoping that we would be able to do more of these appearances. I mean, still, but I'm just glad that
Absolutely,
we're able to.
absolutely. I have more time now, so a little bit more time. I have three kids, so there's it's. But still, we can always make these work. I can always make it happen at some point. So as always, really appreciate it. I guess if I could plug something, if anything, I still stay active in my TNT College Football podcast account on X, Twitter. Hoping to get out to a handful of games this year. Still traveling to stadiums, still interacting with fans. I'm planning on continuing I break down the FBS programs every year. There's going to be 136 this year. They're not going to be as extensive as they've been in the past. I will promise people that because in the past I've done position by position. It's been a lot, and I just don't have time for that anymore. There will be breakdowns and about from every program. Just might be a Twitter thread of like five, six, seven, eight threads in that. So it won't be as extensive as it's been in the past, but it's still something I want to continue because I love doing it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, in the past, like I don't know, and I still don't know how you have time to do all 100, 128 or 136 teams at this point. I mean, it's got to
Yeah,
be bittersweet for you seeing new programs join FBS, but that's
it
also
is.
this Missouri State and Delaware. That's two more programs to have to preview. So, yeah, I can only imagine how bittersweet that is.
It's two more stadiums to get to too. It's like, oh man, but Missouri State isn't terribly far from me, so hey, that's kind of cool, I guess.
Yeah, and I think they have SMU this year. I think they have
They
SMU
do.
at home this year.
Yeah, they
That's
do.
amazing.
It's
That's just a
crazy.
great grab.
It's an
But
amazing grab.
yeah, I can't believe it. Honestly, I didn't think SMU would have any trouble getting. Well, I mean, I guess it's not that they don't have trouble. Honestly, I don't know if I can explain actually how they got Missouri State with the home and home in their first couple years in
Yeah,
FBS.
I don't know how they got that, but good for them.
Yeah, so I mean, again, like with that note, if you see Bobby at the stadium, if you're watching this, I mean, and you're in the area, you know, just link up with Bobby at the game. I mean, we're both huge in the college football community. If you can just grow that, just seeing
Absolutely,
folks that you interact with, you know, regularly at games and everything, it's just great just to interact and just build the community.
absolutely. There's a lot of great people who do the things that we do, so that's been one of the best things about this me doing this. Like, yeah, it's fun to write and talk about things and all that. Like, we love doing that, but the people that I've met, I can say uh, it's been great. I mean, you yourself, Omar, that we've built a friendship out of this. That if I wasn't podcasting or writing or whatever, it wouldn't have happened. So it's been great.
Yeah, I mean, it truly is. Like God works in amazing ways, just with connecting
Absolutely.
us through the various things that the various interests that he puts on our hearts, like especially
Mhm.
college football and college sports. But with that note, thanks again, Bobby, for joining. Really appreciate it. Already look forward to the next time. Thanks to everyone listening and watching. Just be sure to like and subscribe. And until next time, everyone, peace, love, and soul on the Burger Pop.